Having learned about exception handling in Java, let us introduce some basic exception handling in our programs. Here is a problem statement. A bank account class should throw a checked exception when someone tries to deposit a negative amount to the account, withdraw an amount more than the available balance. To solve this, we need to modify the account class to throw custom checked exceptions in case of the scenarios mentioned. Let us create a custom exception class for the first scenario. Name it as negative amount exception. Since we have to create a checked exception, it should extend from class exception. We will provide a default constructor that calls the constructor of superclass exception. We will also provide an overloaded constructor which takes a text message and calls the constructor of superclass with the message. And we are done. See how easy it is to create a custom exception. Now, let us open the account class. Go to the deposit method. We will put a check here for amount being less than 0. If the input amount is less than 0, we should throw an exception. This is done by constructing a new object of the negative amount exception class. It is good to always provide a message while throwing exceptions to tell the user what went wrong. Then just throw the exception object. If you see, we are getting a compiler error that the exception is unhandled. The fix is to either add a throws declaration or to surround it with try catch. What should we do? Well, we are throwing the exception to let the user know that he entered an invalid input. So no point in handling the exception here. If we surround with try catch, the exception will be thrown and then caught in the method itself, as you see here. So it's better to throw the exception to the caller of the method by adding the throws declaration. Let's do that now. Now we get a compiler error in the checkings account class as the deposit method is calling the accounts deposit method, which throws a checked exception. Checked exceptions are required to be handled by the calling method. Now again, we have to make a decision of whether to handle or throw. Well, since even this class is not the actual user, we would like to throw the exception again by adding the throws declaration. Similarly, in the savings account class, we will need to add throws declaration to the add interest method. Now, there is a compiler error showing in the account test class. The same error. Now, should we handle it or throw it? The test class is the actual user in this case, as this is the place where we are sending the amount to be deposited. This is the right place to handle the exception. Surround it with a try-catch block and then display the exception message by calling getMessage on the exception object. This will display the message that we set while throwing the exception. We are using system.err.println to signal that an error has happened. Also, there is a statement added automatically which says e.print_stack_trace. This prints a stack trace of the exception. A stack trace is a list of the method calls that the application was in the middle of when an exception was thrown. This helps in finding out the location in the program where the exception occurred. When we click on the topmost source file name in the stack trace, it takes us to the exact statement from where the exception was thrown. Whenever you get an exception in your programs, do follow the stack trace for debugging the code. We will now test the account class for a positive amount in the deposit method call. In this case, no exception will be thrown and the program works as expected. It is a good practice to identify failure scenarios in your program and handle them by throwing custom exceptions or Java built-in exceptions. In the test class, test all scenarios, those that result in success and those that can cause a failure. In this video, we learned about exception handling in Java and how to create, throw and handle custom exceptions. An exercise for you is to implement the second scenario in the problem statement. I will give you a hint. You can create a custom exception named insufficient funds exception.